There are select few schools who will be having 5-star basketball prospects entering their program this year, but none of those guys are as good as the one that's coming to Waco. This is Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Monopoly Go. I am your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas. Thank you for making it your first listen today and every day. We have got big news coming out of the transfer portal about a guy who's going to take a visit to Baylor this weekend, and he is one of the very top guys that is out there in the portal. So much so that I didn't even think he was an option, but he is. VJ Edgecombe signed on officially to play for Baylor and made an even more important announcement or impact in yesterday's news cycle as well. Even more important than him coming to Baylor, but that's pretty fun too. Also, Mack Rhoades had some interesting comments about his head football coach, Dave Aranda. Interesting in a good way for Baylor fans, and we'll analyze if he was right about that, because honestly, he's more right than he is wrong about this statement. I will say that. But starting first with the transfer portal, I have been banging the drum on and on as recently as yesterday's show about Cliff Amori, the center for Rutgers. That's the guy you want, man. He could play for anybody in the country. And I still believe that. But I was shocked to hear last night that Tennessee center Jonas Adu is actually visiting Baylor this weekend. And I compare him to Cliff Amori because they're basically the same player, which is big time. Awesome. Yes, take that. Jonas Adu, when he announced he was going into the transfer portal I think it was the end of last week, he announces it, and automatically he becomes the third best guy in the portal, according to Evan Miyakawa, and the number 2 guy for On3 Sports. So he jumps in and he's instantly an impact guy. And I mean, there's really no mystery to it. I mean, Tennessee was one of the best teams in the country all year last year, and he was a starter averaging 11-7 for them. Very much like Amori in their games, as well as their size, both basically the same size, 6'11", 240 for Jonas Adu. He's a guy who scores basically just at the rim, but has great athleticism. If you like Yves Missi, you're going to like Jonas Adu. He's not quite the athlete that Missi is, but that's still saying something pretty good. He can still put the ball on the floor a little bit, and he can score in transition. He's a great lob threat, but not just a lob threat. And all the great things we said about Amori and the defensive angle that Amori brings, Adu does the same. I mean, he's a very much a valued defensive guy. In fact, the tweet that I saw from, I think it was Evan Mia, when Adu went into the portal, was, this is one of the best two-way centers in the whole country, one of the best two-way postmen. And that is true. And he is a shot blocking machine. He has a 9% block rate, which is like off the charts good, man. Like, that's really good. Averaged about 2 blocks a game, which is a little bit more. I think it was 1.8 blocks a game, and Yves Missi was about 1.5 blocks. So, like, you're still getting that kind of defensive output, as well as having a guy who is a lob threat, can play above the rim, very efficient in the low post, shoots it at 61% at the rim, which is where most of his field goals are coming from. About 60% of his field goals are coming from there. So in a way, you are adding an experienced guy with a lot of the Yves Missi traits, a lot of the Yves Missi qualities. He does have just 1 year of eligibility left. Same thing with Amori. So it really is, I mean, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. If you're bringing in one of those guys, either way, you are bringing in one of the top big men in the entire country, one of the top big men in the transfer portal as well. So if you're Baylor and you can nab one of those two, again, we haven't heard much on the Amori front, just that he's narrowed it down to 12. Haven't heard about visits or anything like that. We really don't know much of the competition for Jonas Adu. That's been kept pretty close to the chest. But we do know that he is visiting Baylor this weekend. That was reported last night. Excuse me. So we don't know much of the competition, but it was Travis Branham last night who tweeted out that that he's from 247, very trusted guy, actually a Lexington, Kentucky guy, as a matter of fact, that he is visiting Baylor this weekend, Jonas Adu. So big news there. We don't know much of the competition. We do know one school that is after him big time, and that is North Carolina. That sound familiar? Because they're also after Cliff Amore. So either way, you were battling one of the great blue bloods of college basketball for this prized 6'11" talent. Now, one thing or a couple of things I should mention. I've mentioned all the good stuff about Jonas Aidoo. There are some caveats that come to this. First thing, he has declared for the draft. Most of the experts are doubting that he will actually stay in the draft, but he will go through the draft process. So that is something that schools might need to wait on a little bit before they can get his signature. So that's one thing. Again, doubt that he'll actually go through with it and stay with the draft, but he has declared for the draft. Second thing, I looked at his game logs this year, and he was shut out one time in the whole year. And that was in the Elite Eight game against Purdue and Zach Edey. Now, going up against Zach Edey is no easy task. But in your team's most important game of the year, to throw up a goose egg in the points department, that cannot be ignored. That cannot be ignored, especially when you're looking at a team like Baylor that is desperate to get over a hump once again in the NCAA tournament. So that's tough. And in fact, I think when I looked through the game logs, he had been in single digits only like 6 times all year, and 3 of them were in the last 2 weeks of Tennessee's season. So that's not terrific. The other thing that could be seen as a caveat is Jonas Aidoo is from Durham, North Carolina, and UNC is after him. Now, I know there are some of you who are saying, well, Cam, that must be great. Duke is in Durham. So he must, growing up there, he must hate Carolina. Probably not the case. We know here in Waco that there are plenty of Aggies as our neighbors here in Waco. It is very much that way in Durham, North Carolina. In fact, if Duke is the most supported team in Durham, it is by a hair. There are Tar Heels fans everywhere. In fact, JJ Redick had a great story when he was there that like one of his favorite cafeteria workers was a big Carolina fan, and she would, talk crap to him when they would lose the Tar Heels. So you have to deal with UNC at every turn here. They're looking to replace Armando Bacot. They have circled Cliff Amore. They have circled Jonas Aidoo, and Baylor is battling for both. If they could, rock, paper, scissors for who's going to get that. In fact, I was actually texting Isaac Shade, who does Locked On Tar Heels. He gave that very example. We can have one. Y'all can have one. We'll just duke it out for whomever that one is going to be. I'm happy with either one, but Jonas Aidoo is a guy who can come in here and be an all Big 12 guy right away. He is that impactful on both ends of the floor. He has experience. He has strength. He finishes through contact. He takes a lot of pride in the defensive end. This is a guy I think Baylor has been lacking the last couple of years. Definitely in 2023 with having Flo Thamba in there instead. And in a lot of ways in 2024 as well. Again, I'm one of the biggest Yves Missi fans out there. Aidoo just gives you some things that Yves Missi did not give. So big weekend on that front. If you see him at Meet Casita at Scott Drew's booth, please give him a hearty hello and a nice sick'em because this is a guy that Baylor could really, really use. Most schools in the country could use him, and he's only visiting, well, I don't know how many he's visiting this weekend, but he's visiting Baylor this weekend. Like almost 350 teams don't have him visiting this weekend, but Baylor does. So it's something to look positively on. Once those guys start taking visits, that means they are pretty close to making their decision and are seriously considering staying in college basketball in the Aidoo case. Today's episode of Locked On Baylor is brought to you by Yahoo Finance. Okay. All right. When it comes to your financial future, you think you've done it all. You've saved, you've researched, you've invested all that you can wisely. Now you need to take those investments to the next level by using what every financial great uses, and that is Yahoo Finance. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. So whether you're a seasoned investor or you're looking for extra guidance, that's me. That's me. Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, editorial perspective, analyst ratings, customizable charts, everything you need to have the full information on your financial future. That's where Yahoo Finance comes into things. With a community of over 90 million users each month, their real strength is helping you on your way to financial success. So for comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. One more time, that is yahoofinance.com. So Jonas Aidoo, is visiting Baylor this weekend. One guy that we do know is coming to Baylor next year, he made it officially official on Wednesday, is VJ Edgecombe, the 5-star out of Long Island, one of the top recruits in the country, turned down Kentucky and Duke to come to Baylor, turned down Kentucky before it was cool, and Scott Drew did it to come sign with the Bears. Remember that? Was that December or January? Hoop Hall. He has the big announcement on national TV. It's one of the biggest recruits Baylor has ever gotten. And the stats back it up. I mean, he's back-to-back Gatorade Player of the Year in New York, McDonald's All-American, insane motor. I mean, you watch him, and he's the best athlete on the floor anytime he takes the floor, and was doing it against some of the very best competition in all of high school basketball this year. And in fact, I'll even use this quote from Scott Drew, which was put in a press release yesterday. VJ is a dynamic athlete with a great skill set. He has a great feel for the game and will be a great teammate, embracing our culture of joy. More on that in a minute. He will also be a great asset to Baylor University as a whole, and someone our fans can enjoy watching playing every night. And that is it. Like you see him on ESPN, or you go to the Hoop Mixtape on YouTube. He is as exciting as they come. He will, I think, develop as a player as well, much like we saw with like a guy like Yves Missi. You'll see his game start to become more well-rounded throughout the year. And he's part of maybe the best recruiting class Baylor's ever had, with Rob Wright, Jason Asamoah, Noah Boyed in there as well. A class, and this was from the release, that class is ranked as high as #2 in the country by on3.com, and both ESPN Rivals and 247, which that kind of rounds out the Mount Rushmore of what you pay attention to for high school recruiting. They all have Baylor in the top 5. So it is almost unequivocally the best recruiting class they have ever had. And I talked about what he can do as a person more so than just a player, and why he is the greatest of all the great ones coming into programs this year. He is doing the most good. You heard in the Scott Drew quote about the culture of joy. He is definitely someone that keeps Christ in the center of things. We saw that a lot throughout his recruiting process. And he didn't want to just be, or doesn't want to just be, a great player, but wants to give back as well. And we hear so many guys that are, college sports has become free agency this year. They're just going to the highest bidders. We hear that, and that's something that's not going to go away. And it's refreshing to see that VJ Edgecombe is not one of those guys. In fact, he made an announcement that he is going to be giving his NIL money to Gateway Christian Academy, which is the school he went to in middle school and I think a little bit of high school in his home nation of the Bahamas. By the way, a lot of great talent coming out of the Bahamas. I and a lot of other Baylor fans hear that and think Buddy Hield and what a terrific player he was in college. But VJ moved away as a high school kid to go to Long Island Lutheran, and he has decided to give back as well, which is just so heartwarming, man. I mean, he had a meeting with the founder of the school, and Edgecombe had told the founder that he wants a fund from his NIL money that's going to cover tuition, books, and these other academic necessities for the students there. And he was actually quoted in this story from USA Today High School Sports. VJ Edgecombe said, quote, "Kids aren't funded properly. They don't have a strong base or a strong foundation financially. I just want to be able to help them, allow them to be happy, and give them the opportunity to get a free education at which is one of probably the best schools in the Bahamas." And if that doesn't warm your heart, man, I don't know what will. Like, this is a kid who has been through a lot as a 17, 18-year-old. Anyone that's got to move away from home, move out of their home country, go to a whole different culture and country just to get a better chance at life has been through a lot. And I think what VJ Edgecombe is thinking here is, I went to Long Island for that better chance at life. And, obviously now he's a top 5 basketball player in the country. He's going to get a great education at Baylor. And I think what he's basically saying here is, I want to make sure that kids that went to my school have that opportunity without having to leave the country. And it's just, that's fantastic, man. Again, I can't say it enough. And it's not every college athlete, but so many are just looking to see what the big deal is going to be, how much money they're going to get, what kind of cars they can drive. There's plenty of great charitable efforts out there. Bijan Robinson from UT is one that comes to mind with all the help he did for inner city kids in Austin. But this is remarkable maturity for a 17, 18-year-old to say, yeah, I would like to make a lot of money, but it's going to go to a good cause. And that kind of servant heart is what we love at Baylor. We love that he's going to be a fantastic basketball player, but to show a great heart like that and give back to his community, I mean, that's just awesome. That is really awesome. And just not something you're going to see from a lot of the top prospects this year. Shout out to Logan Newman of USA Today High School Sports. He dropped that yesterday, the day that he becomes official to sign on with Baylor, is you're getting this as well. And it is an interesting story. If y'all want to check that out, it's a kind of about VJ's beginnings as well. He's on a small island in the Bahamas, not even Nassau. Like he's 95 miles from the country's largest island. So he's from a rural part of a rural small island nation, and he wants to give back to that. And I think that's going to play very, very well at Baylor. The other thing that will play well is when he's dunking over 6'10" guys as a guard, as a 6'4" guard. His explosiveness is off the charts. Again, Baylor, just to get him in the door and get that signing is a huge win, because we are still in a place where we celebrate turning down places like Duke and Kentucky, as you've probably seen over the last week. And I don't know about y'all, but I am excited beyond belief to see these 4 kids come in and this unbelievable recruiting class they put together. And that might sound hypocritical, because I've said, Baylor needs to move away from the one and done a little bit. And these couple of these kids, I would assume VJ for sure, Robert Wright, are going to have draft stock if they stay healthy to be one and done kids. But I just think this immense amount of talent coming in is the likes of which we really haven't seen ever. Now, there is that 2-year span where you bring in Jared Butler, Maceo Teague, and Davion Mitchell, and we didn't know at the time what kind of a great influx of talent that was going to be. But in terms of, the McDonald's All-Americans, high school national champions, 4-star, 5-star guys competing for some of the, competing against some of the bluest blue bloods in all of college basketball, to land someone like VJ Edgecombe, the player, and VJ Edgecombe, the person, is a massive win for Baylor. And I can't wait to see him put on that Bears uniform next year. Okay, today's episode is also brought to you by Monopoly Go. Okay, y'all know I have that competitive side, right? You know that I do. And the thing that really feeds into it is something like Monopoly Go, honestly, because I don't know about you guys, but I can agree. I do have a very competitive side. Monopoly Go. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It is a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations. You build up these amazing cities like Waco that bring you big money. But the best part is, it's messing with my friends. Come on. I can charge them rent on my properties, just like classic Monopoly, but now I can also heist their vaults for the riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the best Monopoly tycoon is. And I can put that right in the group chat. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with the friends. So the friendly side of me loves it. And people all around the world as well in those time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store as well as with Google Play. Shifting gears over to football, we are nearing the end of spring football practice. The finale is this Saturday, not the spring game. The finale is this Saturday. And we've been kind of hearing some more about Dave Aranda, the defensive coordinator. Okay, the resume speaks for itself, but we want to know what he's like here and now. He's shifting from just the stoic head coach, hands off, to still a little bit stoic, but hands-on, PO'd defensive coordinator. The guy who's out there yelling, slapping guys on the butt, but chewing them out too, is now Dave Aranda, which is different from what we've seen the last 4 seasons he has coached at Baylor. That's not the Dave Aranda we know. And he went out there and said it last week. He had the comment, I'm pissed off a lot more now. And the guys aren't used to seeing that as much. And Mack Rhoades said it on the Matt Mosley show this week, weekdays 3 to 6 on ESPN Central Texas. He said, it's been kind of cool to go out there and see it. In fact, I have the exact quote of what Mack said. He, talking about Dave Aranda, his head coach, who he's kind of hitched the wagon to a little bit, quote, "It's been very cool seeing his edge calling the defense. You see it and you think, this is why he was the best defensive coordinator in the country." So if you look at it that way, which is not crazy, by the way, not to sound like too much of a homer, it's not crazy to call Dave that. You've basically added to your staff one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. Head coach, question mark, but you've added one of the most sought after offensive coordinators, and you've added one of the best defensive coordinators in terms of a resume. And not to be lost in this, you have added one of the great defensive minds of the last 30 years, one of the great head football coaches of the last 30 years to your staff, Gary Patterson. So is it crazy for Mack is Mack just trying to wind this all up by saying he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country? No, he's not. It helps that if we get excited about that for sure, but he's not lying there. He's literally the national championship defensive coordinator the year before he came to Baylor. Had top 5, top 10 defenses just about every season he was at Wisconsin and LSU. Like a fantastic mind. And again, I think back to the game plans he had in 2021. I know that's a couple years ago. I know that. But the guy who a week from today is going to be the first pick in the draft, Caleb Williams, Dave Aranda had him in hell in 2021, had him in an absolute blender in that game against OU, where they needed to bring in Spencer Rattler, which at the time was a total meme. Now he's like a decent quarterback. Dave Aranda had these dudes in hell. Ole Miss, 10 sacks against. Spencer Sanders, all Big 12 quarterback, 6 interceptions in 2 games, or 7 interceptions in 2 games against Baylor. Like when he had the dudes out there, which were not his dudes, I get it, he had the game plan that got a top 5 national finish. And for him to be hands-on with this defense, I think is a very, very promising prospect for Baylor. I really do. So Mack, it's one of those things, again, I talked about it yesterday with Mack. It wasn't something he needed to go out there and say. The question from Matt was not, hey, is Dave Aranda the best defensive coordinator in the country? It was, hey, what are you seeing from spring practice? And he went out there and said, one big change we've seen is in Dave. He is out there. He's more vocal. He's more volatile in a good way. And it goes to show why he was one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. And he was that. I think he is that. And if you're a Baylor fan, again, not blowing smoke, it's not something that you will see in the results in week 1, I don't think. This is something that could take time. And I don't know if the staff has time. I don't. But you added one of the best offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches in the entire country. You added one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. And you added one of the best college football coaches of the last 30 years. That's just the facts. Subjectively, those are just the facts. You've added some terrific pieces to this staff. And I hope it is something that catches on quickly so that the staff in its form right now gets a fair shot at things. But I understand if they start slowly, then your backs are up against the wall. You're in year 5 of this thing. I totally understand. Anyway, let me know what you think. Is Dave Aranda one of the best defensive coordinators in the country? Drop that down in the comments below. How about this VJ Edgecombe story, man? I'm going to have hopefully a guest on next week to kind of break down his game a little bit more so. But this news yesterday, not just signing with Baylor, but the NIL stuff is incredibly heartwarming. Drop your opinions on that down in the comments below. And of course, what do you think gets Jonas Adu here to Baylor? We've got NIL in order for basketball. We've got a terrific new arena. We've got an unbelievable coach. We have got national championship aspirations. Is that enough to get Jonas Aidoo here over North Carolina? Drop that down in the comments below. We will see you tomorrow with a little more football talk as we look ahead to that spring practice finale on your favorite show, which is, of course, Locked On Baylor.